to. Oh, it was when I came. That's when the Peace Corps business came.
Yeah.
There was some reason which I came to here, and he said, "We'll arrange for you to drop in and see the president." And I went and I talked to the president, and I said, "We've heard about Peace Corps, what you're doing, etc." I said, "But we noticed that there's no medical work yet. I've not seen anything." He said, "Well, we've not thought about that. We're thinking about teachers, etc., etc." He said, "You go and talk to my brother-in-law." So I went and talked to his brother-in-law, who was head of the Peace Corps.
This was Kennedy. You were talking to Kennedy?
Yes, Kennedy. And his brother-in-law was, what's his name now?
Sergeant Shriver.
Shriver.
Right.
And he said, "Yes, that's an idea. We'll have to think about it. I think so. We'll do that." So that was also something that I did.
So you're responsible not only for the first museum director, but also the first doctors that went over there.
Well, not only there, but they had no medical section of Peace Corps was not at that time doing anything in the medical field.
No, they weren't. That's true. How did you find Schreiber?
He was very interesting, but I mean, to me, he was just this person. He just come for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
He was very friendly, everything like that.
Yeah.
But in that connection, since this doesn't have to be in sequence, in that connection. In that connection, I was the first African to be a guest at Blair House.
Really?
Yes.
And how did you find President Kennedy?
Oh, he was very, very, very interested. I mean, he was just interested in what I was saying, and he was too busy. But I mean, the result of that, again, as things do travel, when he died, I happened to be at the UN at the time, and so I represented Sierra Leone at the funeral. And again, one of these good luck things that happened at the church, the Roman Catholic Cathedral here.
Yeah.
That's where we went to church, and I had one of the front seats with other diplomats, etc., because I was foreign minister and as well, one of the ambassadors. So then, walking out, when we followed and we stood at the place there at the time when the first, and when John saluted his father, we were just behind him. But then walking, we had to walk a certain distance before we could ride. And I was walking in line with the Emperor of Ethiopia and Prince Charles's father, the Duke of
course,
Edinburgh.
Prince Philip.
And one of the pictures in Time, if you find it, you'll find me there working.
Oh, really?
Not Time, Life. It was Life magazine.
Oh, yes, I have to look for that because.
But we went, and then I think at one point, no, I think we walked all the way, because the people were walking all the way with the carry-on the thing. We walked all across the bridge to the funeral place and stood around the grave, and they were buried. But when we got back, now all of us came back, we got a message that the First Lady would be very grateful if we just talked to him so that she could say thank you to all of us. So by turn, we went up the stairs where she was. And in that short time, she changed from her funeral thing and greeted each one of us and thanked us for what we've done representing our country. So that was my only contact, but with from that side of it. But then another contact, things always happen like this. It happened that when she got, with the Onassis business, etc., after she left Onassis, she became very friendly with a man who was Frank's boss, Templesman.
Templesman, Morris.
And one day Templesman called me to his office and said, "Look, we know that you are a World Health Organization, you must have all those contacts. Mrs. Kennedy would like her daughter, if possible, to have an internship with the World Health Organization, go to Geneva." I said, "I'll see what I can do." So I wrote to Geneva, and the Director General said, "Well, this is unusual, but that's a family that we cannot turn down. So if she really wants to, we can arrange next summer, she can come." So I came back and reported to Kennedy, and he said, "Okay, let's call Mrs. Kennedy and we can tell her this, that can go." So we had lunch together in Templesman's office in Manhattan. But then they let me down because afterwards the young lady changed her mind. She said, "I don't want to go," so all of that. But that made my contact with her, having met her at the funeral of her husband and then meeting her with her new boyfriend in Washington. That's another thing that another door was open.
Well, let's see, where we left off when we took the break. You had become Minister of
Lands, Mines
and Labor.
And then I'd taken the delegation to London.
Right. And then then, and also you occasionally filled in for the Prime Minister.
Oh, very often, not occasionally, very often. Because you see, Sir Milton was old, and one of his faults, like many of us doctors have, he started treating himself. He had a very serious ulcer of the stomach, actually duodenal ulcer, and he started taking, again, aphasia, forgotten the drug. And I talked to him about such, and he said, you know that this drug is very powerful, you shouldn't take it. I said, yes, but I'm very careful, etc., etc. But it got to the place where his liver became destroyed, his liver became malfunctional. It was during those periods of his illness that any time he'd say, well, you take over, you know what the thing to do, especially if he had to go someplace, etc. And I acted several times, the record will show. But then since we've got to that, we might have well finished his death business, shall we? Or do you want to take this in order? Let's leave that until we get to that.
Yeah. Do you want to say something more about Sir Milton? I mean, you knew him very well.
Very well. I knew him better than anybody I can say, except Sally, his woman.
So what was he like?
He was a very interesting person. Humble to begin with. Humble because of the way he'd been treated. I mean, from the time he was in England, although he was married to an English woman, but he never did like what other doctors in Freetown did. And also very wise. I mean, for instance, one of the wise things he did out of the blue, he said, look, we have this Bondo business here. People are criticizing it, everything, but they're not doing anything positive. So I'm going to do something. He talked to the women, and coming from a big family, rather, they listened to him. He started teaching. He would go to the Bondo bush and teach the women about what he thought, little bits of hygiene and things that he would know. And if people had done that long ago, the problem would not have become so big that the world became so interested in it.
Yeah.
And also, he was in a way very impartial. He did not take the tribal business too strongly, but people do not know the real reason. The real reason is that Chamilton's family is not Mende at all. He told me himself that his parents came from the north.
Really?
Yes, and went and traded in several countries. That's how, where they got the word Magai come from. He says we're not Mende, we're not anything, but that's where our father came and made his fortune. We were born there. He says, that's why I like you people up in the north. That's why I had my farmer task and the others. He drew them into the cabinet. He said, I'm not going to do what people expect me because I'm a Mende coming from there, that I'm going to do that. He said, they have an equal place, like you've come here now. I take you as one of us. And he had that kind of feeling, and he started leading us in the direction, if we'd followed, the problems which are now becoming so acute would not have been there.
Talk about Independence Day, that day.
Well, let me go beyond that. Sir Milton did not really believe in independence.
He did not?
Oh no, because he had, I mean, his whole culture, Probe College, Durham University, Newcastle Medical School, etc. He just enjoyed being part of the British system. And especially when we became there, when he was now Prime Minister of a British territory, the Governor General treated him almost like a senior friend, etc. Independence meant nothing to him. And the reason why I know this was this. On one of my missions to the United Nations, especially after he'd left, he came with us when we entered the United Nations because he had to be there to become the 100th member, and he left and I remained. And part of the talks that I had with the press, etc., I said, of course, we're looking forward to the time when, as part of the British Commonwealth, we will be independent. We will, like India and the others are independent. The Queen is still head of the Commonwealth, but we're not under no British subjects. We'll become independent union. And word of this got to Sir Maurice Dorman, and he went and told Sir Milton, you see what Karefa-Smart is doing over there, taking in the United Nations, that Sierra Leone is going to be an independent country instead of. And when I went back, Sir Milton was angry. He said, look, I sent you there. I didn't ask you to talk about independence. I said, Sir Milton, I had no alternative. If people or your colleagues tell you what is your future, and I can tell them that if I go to Tonkolili and tell them we're independent, but our Queen is in England, they say, what does that mean? I mean, your Queen is in England. I said, so I told them that in future we will do what other countries have done. We will still be part of the British realm, but we will have our own country with our own head, and that's what independence means. And that's all I said. He said, oh, now I understand. Okay, forget about it. I'm not angry at you anymore. But so that was, again, he was limited in that sense that since he had not had the experience of anything besides Sierra Leone and England, he did not see anything beyond that realm. So that he would defend them as anything, and therefore the British liked him. They could tell him anything as long as it was not against his will. He'd say, yes, I agree, that's all right, this is what we have.
What was his attitude towards the Creoles?
No, unfriendly, very unfriendly, because of the way they treated him. It was the Creoles, after all, who made it impossible for him ever to be posted. Every doctor aims at one time or other to be part of the Connaught Hospital thing, because it's the best hospital in the country. But not once did they even pass him through. They sent him all over the country, but never once at him. So he did not like them, and of course they did not like him also. They did not like him.
So, okay, so now we're at independence. And did things change? I mean, I remember when we went over there were still British police officers and British military officers.
Everything British. But of course, when we became independent, he had to have, that's why his Albert's brother-in-law became head of succeeded the British head of the thing, because there again he had to choose one of his own people, and they blamed him. He was not the most senior African officer, but after all he was married to Albert Magai's relationship. I forget what relationship was, and he was part of the same country. So we didn't mind that at all. We just wanted the army to become Africanized. But that's also led later on to my other problems.
Before we leave this part, what was the story behind Shaka Stevens being arrested just before independence? What happened there?
Well, we'll have to change the words a little bit. He was detained.
Okay.
We had no intelligence of our own when we started as an independent country, but the British intelligence transmitted to Sir Milton Magai and therefore to me through the governor. He was then not Governor General yet, he was still governor until we became. Anyway, he told Sir Milton that the British intelligence was that Shaka Stevens was being supported from Ghana and also by the communist people in England, of which they had evidence that while he was in England, he and Albert Magai were both members of the Communist Party in England, and that they had intelligence that he was planning to disrupt the independence celebrations. And the safest thing for the Prime Minister to do, since the son of the Queen was going to be there, the safest thing to do was to make sure that he did not carry out his plans. So Sir Milton and I talked together, said, what shall we do? And our advice was just detain him, just keep him away so that he's not free to carry on with his plans. Because Sir Milton detained him. I suppose he had to be arrested to be detained, but he treated him not as a prisoner. He put him, they had these concert halls on Hill Station, across from, after you, just before you get to the government hotel.
Okay.
A nice concert hall which was well furnished, etc. They put him there with his gun. And every day Sir Milton would, when I used to talk to him every day, he said, look, take this bottle of whiskey for Shaki. We call him Shaki. We know he'll enjoy it. So I'd go and we'd sit down, we'd talk, and Sir Milton said, this is your present for you. He said, okay, and you know, don't put him there. So he was treated really, he was treated like he would have been treated outside, but he was detained so that he would not continue, and nobody was allowed to visit him except me, coming from the Prime Minister's office, so that he would not continue his plans to disrupt independence. That's all. And as soon as things happened, he was released. No trial, nothing whatsoever. He was just prevented from doing what he was planning